Look at this, it's fun to paint. Ah!
My mother was a teacher and a bit of an artist herself, and I remember her giving me giant pieces of paper with paints, and I would just go to town, and I pretty much have never stopped. I grew up near a swamp, played in the swamp with my friends, made sculptures out of moss and twigs. We were just having fun. I didn't realize that it would so profoundly influence my life and my work. During my time in college, I found out about a group of painters in Gray. The place was called Studio One. It turns out that Henry Henshey, who was an influential painter in America, actually was living and died in Gray, Louisiana. Which is funny that he's in Gray because he's an impressionist, a colorist, and he's known for his use of color. So while I was going to college, I was also studying with sculptors and painters that I met through him. He had already died by the time I knew of his legacy, but that was a big influence on me. After I graduated from McNeese, I really wanted to work as an artist and on my own terms. I mean, I was working in coffee shops, doing the graveyard shift, but really wanted to make a go at it. And so I set up my easel at a park in Lake Charles and put a sign out that said portraits like $5 or $10 or something. So I only had one customer the entire day, and I got kind of discouraged. But while I was being discouraged, I looked across the river and I saw the casinos, and I said, oh, they have money, they'll pay me. So I created my own job, my own niche. I got my portfolio together, my portraits, and brought it to the entertainment person at the casino and said, I think you should hire me as an entertainer. I'll draw people's portraits and be a service for the casino and entertainment for your clients, and something that the other casino across the river doesn't have. That was my first experience in marketing myself, and that's what I did. That's how I paid for my first semester of graduate school in New York and my expenses there. Never pictured myself being in New York for 13 years, but have been there primarily for 13 years. I'm down here a tremendous amount, but I'm still based out of Brooklyn, or Brooksland as I like to call it. And the first piece I did in New York, based on my relationship to Louisiana, was a piece from my imagination of the swamp. Of all the work that I've made, that's probably the one piece that most people have responded to. There was kind of no turning back after that. I continue to paint a variety of subjects, but I keep coming back to themes of my youth and my culture here in Louisiana. I use very traditional methods of painting. I typically paint from life, whether it's a king cake baby or a landscape or a figure. I typically don't use photography. I'm trained in classical realism, so I paint from observation. The first large initiative or series I did was the series in coquetry. My friend Brenda Babin was working in Lumpcon, and she had invited me to paint in the tower they have there. I would get up at 5 in the morning to get there before the sun went up, because at the time there was no air conditioning in the tower, and I had to work quickly before the sun came up in July. So I wanted to do it for the aesthetic reasons, but also because I wanted to document this place. I did a panorama of the view from coquetry, 13.5 feet by 16 inches, so it's extremely long, and I wanted for it to encompass your field of vision so that you could feel like you were there in the wetlands. There wasn't one primary viewpoint, there was multiple viewpoints, so I had to really kind of construct an entirely new space that didn't exist, because the conventional rules of perspective didn't apply, because you can't this is multiple things. When you're looking around, like I had to paint out of my field of vision here, and then reposition myself. It was a fascinating process, and really proud of the piece and my home. And then it was purchased by Michel Claudet, who's the parish president of Terrebonne Parish, and he put it in the government tower, so it's essentially in a public collection. I had been coming out of this classical tradition of painting from observation and painting poetic scenes of the area I grew up in, and then the oil spill happened and I just lost it. I was actually living in New Orleans at the time. I was teaching at the New Orleans Academy of Fine Art. I was upset, I was angry. I knew I had to make art about it. I visited Orange Beach, Alabama that summer, and We were told that the beaches were clean, and of course they weren't. They had gigantic tar balls all over the beach, which further fueled my emotions, and I decided to collect it and make paintings with it. The first one I did was a portrait of the CEO at the time, Tony Hayward. Did a lot of very physical application of the paint and thick gestural approach. The physical action of painting became a bit of an emotional release because I would slash at the canvas with these gigantic marks and use knives and brushes and throwing it on there, whatever I had to do. I was also painting dystopian landscapes, or these tortured kind of views of the environment. It just got too heavy and too depressing to me to continue working on dystopian or cataclysmic future views of my home. But it was my way of processing it, but a year into work I couldn't do it anymore. Took a break and decided to paint subjects that I cared about, like my godchild. I did a 7-foot portrait of her at her baptism, and a shrimper, and other subjects like the king cake baby. What I like about the subject of the king cake baby is it becomes a stand-in for any kind of interaction you want to discuss or talk about. I can talk about subjects that people wouldn't normally want to approach, like the oil spill or like hurricanes, racism, race relations, greed in politics or in government. It feels a little more accessible because of the lightness of the image of it. I found that it really sparks a lot of conversation. I think that's what's powerful about art. We can approach subjects that feel unapproachable.